The most expensive thing in your life might not be the most valuable. Welcome to another video based on the book What People Get Wrong About Economics, a guide to the core concepts by Library of Ideas. Today I tell you about price and worth. Two words people often treat as if they mean the same thing. Imagine you lose your phone. You know exactly what it costs to replace. The number is clear. It is written on a website. But imagine losing an old photograph stored on that phone, or a voice message from someone who is no longer alive. What is the price of that? In everyday life, we move easily between numbers and meaning. We say something is worth it because we paid for it. We assume that if something is expensive, it must be important. But price is a number agreed in exchange. Worth is something else. And once you separate the two, the way you see markets, money, and even your own decisions begins to change. It's a Saturday morning at a small market in South London. The air smells of coffee and damp cardboard. A thin, elderly man stands at a stall covered in second-hand books. He picks up a worn paperback. The corners are bent. The pages are yellow with age. He turns it over gently, like it might fall apart. The seller barely looks up. £3. A few steps away, a young woman leans over a glass case filled with jewellery. The pieces catch the light and give it back in sharp flashes. She pauses at a small silver ring with a clear stone. The price tag reads £200. She doesn't hesitate. She taps her card, waits for the beep, slides the ring onto her finger and smiles. The old man looks at the book again. He sighs and puts it back on the pile. "Too expensive," he mutters, and walks away. From the outside, it seems simple. One thing is cheap, the other is expensive. One is bought, the other is left behind. Two prices, two reactions. Nothing dramatic, just ordinary moments. And yet, if you look more closely, something doesn't quite add up. Most people would see this and shrug it off. The ring costs more, so it must be worth more. The book costs £3 and still doesn't sell, so it can't be that important. The numbers seem to settle it without any debate. Price starts to do the talking for the object. A higher price suggests importance, rarity, desire. A lower price suggests something ordinary, replaceable, easy to overlook. The tag feels like a small statement of truth. In this way of thinking, value lives inside the thing itself. The ring carries more value than the book because the market has measured it and shown it to be true. The market doesn't create value, it just uncovers it, like brushing dust off something that was already there. It feels neat, reasonable. The world lines up neatly. More money equals more worth. Less money equals less meaning. And price becomes a quiet judge, deciding what matters and what doesn't. Simple. Almost too simple. But something doesn't quite fit. For the old man, that book was once everything. He read it as a student, in a small room with thin walls and too much ambition. He still remembers the opening lines. He can picture the exact evening when one passage made him stop and stare at the page for a long time. £3 isn't just a price to him. It feels strangely small, almost dismissive, compared with what the book holds in his memory. For the young woman, the ring isn't just silver shaped into a circle. It carries a promise. It might mark a decision already made, or one that's about to be made. It could stand for someone she loves, or for the person she hopes to become. She's not paying only for metal and stone, she's paying for what they mean. This is where a different word starts to surface. Value. Not as a label on a shelf, not as a number on a tag, but as something that lives in the space between a person and a thing. Something that can't be weighed or measured the same way as the object itself. Value doesn't sit inside objects the way weight or length does. You can't hold it up to the light. You can't measure it with a ruler. It's not a physical property, even though we often talk as if it is. What feels priceless to one person can mean almost nothing to someone else. A glass of water in London is so easy to come by that you hardly notice it. The same glass in the middle of a desert can mean the difference between life and death. The water hasn't changed, the world around it has. Value depends on the situation, on needs, on hopes, on what someone expects from the future. It depends on what other options are available and how much time there is to decide. It shifts as circumstances shift. It grows, it fades, it appears and disappears. Objects don't have to change for value to change. People do. Their lives move on, their priorities turn, their options grow or shrink. The meaning of the same thing can transform without the thing itself being altered in any visible way. A price is only an attempt to capture this moving relationship at one moment. It freezes a living judgment into a number, just for now. And yet, it's easy to go too far the other way. It wouldn't feel right to say value is completely random, as if anything could be worth anything at all. If that were true, trade would fall apart. No one would agree on a price for long enough to actually exchange anything. Not every number makes sense. Not every object can be sold for any amount. There are limits that quietly hold things steady. Making something takes time and effort. Some goods are rare. Some alternatives are easier to find than others. These things matter. They shape what people are willing and able to give. The market isn't a fantasy where imagination alone decides the numbers. So attention shows up. On one side, value lives in personal judgment. On the other, prices show patterns that aren't random. They reflect costs, scarcity, and the choices of lots of people all at once. Value might be personal, but prices aren't just accidents. They're where many subjective views meet, pressed together by real limits. From a distance, this is a turning point. If value is subjective, then price can't be a moral judgment. It doesn't announce what's noble or shallow. It doesn't decide what deserves respect. It simply shows how much people are willing to give up for something at a particular moment. The idea that prices reveal some deep, objective truth starts to break down. The market doesn't uncover a hidden essence inside objects. It brings together countless individual judgments and squeezes them into one visible number. That number isn't sacred. It isn't final. It's the result of many people weighing their needs, their limits, their alternatives, all at the same time. Once you see this, other things start to look different. Profit is no longer automatic proof of virtue or greed. Inflation isn't just numbers going up. Inequality can't be explained by prices alone. The ground shifts. And from here on, the story of economics needs to be told in a more careful way. The old man walks home without the book. He walks with empty hands, but his mind is still full. The story it holds is still alive in him, even if the paperback stays on the stall. The young woman steps onto the pavement and looks at the ring on her finger. She turns her hand slightly, watching the light catch on the stone. For a moment she stands still, as if weighing something that can't be written down on a receipt. Nothing in the physical world has changed. The metal is still metal. The paper is still paper. The objects are exactly what they were an hour ago. What gives them weight isn't what they're made of. It's the connection to memory, to hope, to fear, to promise. Meaning doesn't sit inside things. It grows out of how people see them. A price is a number. Value is meaning. And once that difference becomes clear, the whole shape of economics starts to look different. The market begins to empty. The stalls fold down. The smell of coffee fades into the cold afternoon air. The book is still worth £3 to the seller. The ring is still worth 200 to the jeweller. The numbers remain. But the meaning never sat in the numbers. That is what we have uncovered. Price tells us what was exchanged. Value tells us why it mattered. Confuse the two, and we start asking the wrong questions. We treat markets as moral judges. We treat money as a measure of dignity. We assume that what is expensive must be important, and what is cheap must be trivial. Here is the thought to carry forward. Price is a signal, worth is a story, and the story is always larger than the signal. In the next episode, we step into something less comfortable. Risk, the asymmetry nobody likes to see. Most people don't get economics wrong because they're careless. They get it wrong because they only see fragments. A model here, a headline there, an opinion that sounds convincing, but has no roots. This series tries to correct those mistakes. But correction is only half of the work. If you want to understand where these ideas come from, how they were shaped, challenged, and transformed over time, you need the longer story. That's what the History of Economics in 25 Scenes is. Not a collection of theories, but a map of how people have tried to understand wealth, power, and markets across centuries. In the videos, we challenge what people get wrong. In the book, you see why those mistakes happen in the first place. If you want to go deeper, you'll find it on Amazon as an ebook or in print. Because without the full story, even the right answers can feel incomplete. You'll find the full book on Amazon. Link in the description.